And welcome to I Protest. This is Donald Jeffries, coming to you from just outside the swamp infested Washington, D.C., as we do every Friday at this time. I have a great guest today that I learned contacted me through Substack. He reads my articles, and I'm always interested in your stories out there, people that are dealing with municipal corruption. I don't think there's too many other podcasts that cover what I call municipal corruption, which is kind of local corruption. Um, local law enforcement, certainly child protective services, and that is the boogeyman today, the child protective services, and we've had other people on here who've been victimized by them. So Clyde, he's just going to go by Clyde. Um, the way he introduces himself, he's just a wayfaring stranger who has done deep research into law, history, philosophy, and political potterology to try and get a handle on why the dark triad personalities believe they will be able to escape God's judgments. So I'll let you. He's going to tell his story, and what I would like, I just tweeted out on Twitter. I don't promote this as well as I should have. So hopefully people will see it over there. Love to get your video and audio calls. So I'll put the link out there later in the show. But I know there are others out there that have been victimized by child protective services, have similar stories. Some of them have been on my show. So I'd love to hear from you. Or maybe you can give advice or input. Clyde, welcome to the show.
Hmm. I don't know why the sound keeps kind of echoing on through my earphones here. It should be coming through clearer.
It's echoing.
Anyway,
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Well, it's great to have you on the show.
I can hear you, but it's kind of like a reverb on an amplifier.
Hmm,
I don't know.
I'm not sure. Everybody out there in the chat, let me know if you're hearing me okay. I don't know. Sometimes I have audio issues, but let me know if the sound is okay out there. Um, but anyway, you're going to do most of the talking. So first of all, give us. I read your introduction. Tell us something about yourself, and I believe you were introduced to me through Substack. So just give us an idea of how you came. We're going to talk about in terms of the Child Protective Services, but give us a little background on yourself and how you came to have this run-in with them.
Well, actually, I think my history going back with organized crime and various factions goes back to when I was a young man. I was kind of inducted or maneuvered into being an MK Ultra candidate for a while, so they really messed with my mind with my first wife, and they messed with her mind as well, and they kind of screwed that marriage up. But they were using me pretty extensively as one of their mercenaries or soldiers of fortune, and I did a lot of things that I regretted doing. And I finally repented and came to my senses and quit doing their dirty work. But by the time I figured it out, my first marriage was destroyed because of all their meddling and interference there. So I divorced my first wife, and I went for about 8 years before I met and married my second wife. And with my second wife, I thought I could settle down and have a regular life. But they don't like they don't forget that people that they had control before, and so they were stalking me. The CPS, local police. Um, we were homeless a couple of times, camping out in the forest, and the BLM and the Forest Service. They always want to isolate me from my family and talk with me, and I couldn't understand why they tried to do that, but they had targeted me.
Who exactly, Jeff
And
Beasley? Who exactly was doing this to you? You said you did mercenary work and stuff. Who were you referring to as doing this, and who was targeting you?
well, it started when I was in the army. That's where I first learned how to kill with hand to hand, and then um, I think it's the corporate Illuminati factions that I ended up doing a lot of work for. So I think it was organized crime, the global syndicate, if you will. I think there's probably a lot of soldiers that they trained just to go take care of their dirty work for them, and they would usually hold something over their head, like my first wife. She was a honeypot. They kind of set me up to where I didn't know anything about that. Of course, being a young man, I was more hormones than anything. So it was very easy for them to use her to manipulate me to do what they wanted. But as I said, when I finally came to my senses, I realized it's not going to, it doesn't matter how many battles I fight, the war will never be over. You know, you just keep fighting and fighting and fighting until you're dead or whatever. But I couldn't do it anymore. So I had to walk away from that world and that life. There was a lot of money there, but it wasn't any kind of a life. But I started working a lot in construction and learned how to become a framing carpenter, and that's what I started to do to take care of myself. It didn't pay very much, but it kept me alive. And that's when I met my second wife, 8 years after I divorced my first wife. Um, she and I had a son together, and we raised him for the first 8.5 years of his life. But during that time that me and my second wife were together, we continued to have police coming in and hassling us and asking us questions and um, trying to say we were neglecting him and stuff like that. They couldn't actually prove anything, but they would just throw out those uh, casual accusations in an accusatory manner. And it wasn't until we put our son in the public school system that they started moving in earnest. And they, when he was in the first grade, a sheriff's detective and CPS worker brought him home.
Hello, Clyde? Clyde, are you there? Clyde? Clyde said he'd been having some trouble with internet. Okay, no, so he's back, I think. Let's see.
Yeah, it dropped for a
Yeah,
minute.
okay. Yeah, you were knocked off for a little. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Anyway, all I could say is from what I was observing, it looked like they just took him and, ground his face and the front of his body in the dirt. They brought him home. They said he went to school that way. And they claimed that was neglect. And that's when I started connecting the dots. There's something very wrong going on with that school. But the sheriff's detective was holding my son by the back of his neck, and my son was crying so hard he couldn't say anything, and I couldn't get him to even talk. Even after they left, he was just traumatized by whatever happened at the school. Really, really badly. But it wasn't until the first trimester of the second grade that they came out with the child abuse excuse. And when they came out with that, they used that as a probable cause to isolate, they isolated, interrogated, strip searched, and photographed my 8.5-year-old son in the second grade. And they used that as their probable cause to take me and my wife on warrantless arrest. First, they were just trying to cut me off from having my wife. They didn't want any witnesses to my disappearance, but I wanted to let my wife know that they were attacking us. And she came out to my defense, and they turned and attacked her. Well, they put me and my wife both, the natural biological parents, in coercive detention for 57 days. And um, when we were arraigned, it was by video court there at the jail. After 72 hours of being incarcerated, the judge asked me if we wanted attorneys, not knowing anything about how that game was played or any of that works. I said, yeah, we're probably going to need some because it was evident they weren't going to let us go. They took our son from the school because he couldn't come home that day. Obviously, his parents were both in jail. Um, and they just basically gaslighted us all the way through it, trumped up a bunch of charges that wouldn't exist if they hadn't invaded our lives. The one deputy kept saying how I was attacking them while they were peacefully trying to arrest me. And I didn't feel like being taken hostage to their opinions and being kidnapped. I always suspected, just because somebody thinks you committed a crime, that doesn't give them authority to arrest anybody. But they showed me, that I was wrong on that.
Okay, he's losing it again. Hopefully he comes back here. The connection isn't great. So, folks, we do what we can. Connection, the guest connection, whatever. I got to tell you, though, folks, I'm getting a little demoralized here, though, the people that are listening, because I'm looking at the numbers that I can see, and I don't really know what the numbers mean that I can see in terms of people watching this. And they have been down the last 3 shows at least. And today it is ridiculous. I mean, according to this, almost no one is watching the show. So, well, I guess if you're not watching the show, I can't ask you what's going on, but I think you can understand somebody in my position, if your audience starts to diminish, and said, "Oh, now he's gone completely," instead of growing. I mean, I don't understand. I can look. There's a lot of familiar names I see, like in the America Unplugged chat room. Still, I don't see them anymore here. So I don't know. Maybe give me some constructive criticism why people are not coming into the show. I mean, the audience. I mean, it's like maybe 1/4 of what I had, maybe 1/5. I don't know. Here's Clyde. Okay, you back, Clyde?
Don't I don't know what's going on, but I can
Yeah,
understand it's getting all garbled what you're saying.
yeah. Well,
I don't know.
that's has to be on your end because the audience claims they can hear me fine in the chat. So I don't. And obviously, your connection's something going on with it because it's knocked you off a few times already. So sorry, I hate we kind of. But basically, the story is they came, they arrested you and your wife, they took your son away, and as I understand it, the main charge was that you spanked him, right? What is that? What the main thing they said?
Hmm.
Was that the reason they gave you?
I don't know if this connection is going to even allow me to continue this, Tom.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you sometimes, but most of what you're saying is like it's garbled. It's
I don't know. Chat again. You guys are still hearing me, okay? Right? They told me before it was loud and clear, so I'm not sure. I think it must be on your end. Is there a way you can use? Do you have a phone? You could that we could get the link to. Maybe we could use a phone.
um, I wish I had better internet service, but I'm using a Verizon phone for my modem, and when you use the 5 gigabytes up, they slow the connection down. So that might be what the problem is. I've just got a really slow connection.
You could. Oh no, he has no connection. Okay, he left again. Okay, he's trying. I'm sorry, folks. It's an interesting story, and again, but this is kind of this. That's true with my show. With those of you who have been with me since the TFR days know that this. I remember when I had uh, John McAfee. Great big guest. I had him on a few times, and one of the times I had him on, everything was messed up, and I couldn't get him on for. It was embarrassing, but he was really cool. He liked me, and I liked him, and still would like to get a hold of his widow. She doesn't answer me anymore. She used to answer me, but trying to see what she thinks about things. All right, try to give Clyde another chance. Okay, Clyde. Sorry, man. Sorry it keeps happening.
It's not your fault. I'm just too poor to afford regular high-speed internet.
Well, it should still work, but I mean, I know, I understand that, and you kind of fit into probably everybody that's listening to this show. We're all, so many people are living paycheck to paycheck. It's hard to pay for things when they're constantly going up in price. I see you're already losing connection. I apologize, folks. White Wolf says I need to have on more interest. This guy's an interesting guest. It's an interesting problem. We can't hear it. Uh, Look, next week I'm going to have one of the actresses from the Sound of Music. Is that good enough for you? She's got a great story. She has a challenged son. She read my article about my niece. It's going to be a great show. I'll promote it, but it's hard to hide my disappointment when I see these numbers, guys. I don't know. Yeah, I would like to pull McAfee out of hiding. I don't know where he is. Well, White Wolf says, how many times we discussed it? Well, how many? I haven't discussed the JFK assassination for a while. Clyde is still trying to. Let me see if this one's there. Clyde, you there? Okay, I don't know what happened to Clyde. Let me try that. Nope. All right, guys, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the let's see. I'm gonna put the StreamYard link out there now. So anybody that wants to come on, and again, I realize obviously I'm dealing with a pretty small audience again, which is pretty demoralizing. But the people, and I really appreciate you guys that are listening and watching. All right, I put the link out there in the chat. So come on in, whether we get him, whether we get Clyde back or not. Come on and we can discuss something. Robin Lee says he thought McAfee. Well, he supposedly did, but this was years ago when I had my TFR show, Robin. I had him on 2 or 3 times then. Let's see. We can talk about whatever you guys want. You come on. And again, I don't know if Clyde's going to be back or not. We'll see if he makes it. But basically, the bottom line is his son was taken away from him. And if he doesn't get a chance to come back on, and that's why it moves me when I hear these stories. I've had the couple on, several times that lost their kids and they got him back, and when they vaccinated one of them, now he's very very autistic when he wasn't anything before because they vaccinated him. Generic Sue says sometimes I watch Tony's channel instead because I've had your video deleted midstream on too many times. Well, I don't know who's deleting it. A lot of times I have to delete my video from YouTube because otherwise they'll cancel my channel. That's why I do that. Clyde, you back?
Yes, I'm going to try and go to the chat and see if I can make that work.
Go to the chat. Okay. Okay. Well, I hear you okay now. So, and I don't know if you hear me okay. Get rid of this guy. Okay, that. Which Clyde is on? Okay. There's this one. Clyde is going to try to go over to the chat. And again, I got to stop watching these numbers, guys. I'm telling you, this is the lowest number I've had maybe ever. So I don't know what's going on, but I'll see you on the 3rd, Vince. Thank you, brother. Thanks for being here. Okay, Clyde, we have a 3rd Clyde here. Let me get rid of the old ones. Let's try this one. Clyde?
Yes.
You're trying. What else I can do? Can you, if you see my video, maybe you can cut my video off. That might help you with bandwidth. I know you don't have your video on, so that shouldn't be a problem, but maybe if you cut my video from your feed, that might save some bandwidth.
I couldn't quite make that out because of the distortion.
Okay.
In short, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this podcast today.
I understand it, brother. I'm sorry, and I know you're trying. I was trying to tell people what happened, that eventually you lost your son and you have not been able to, he was into foster care, which is another corrupt thing. And so unfortunately, that's awful when that kind of happened. And
Uh,
I'm still waiting to hear the first story from somebody that had an experience with CPS that was positive, and they helped the family. They always break families up, and that's what they did to you.
it's hmm, oh boy.
Well, I can hear you. So talk while you're on. Remember when you're going to drop off again.
Yeah, I can see it keeps streaming again. Um, it was just the coolest, most sadistic thing that myself and my second wife ever experienced with these people, with the courts, with the lawyers, with the CPS, all of them. They're very cruel and sadistic toward us. And I took the David Windmiller law claims course to try and find a way to get my son home. And the more I studied, the more I realized it's not going to matter what I present them with. They aren't going to accept the facts. They're just going to pick and choose, and I would have no standing in their courts. Because as a strong man or a dead corporate name, you don't have any standing to have any complaint in their court system. That's what I found out with the Utah Court of Appeals. So it's been a little over 23 years ago that they violently dissolved my family just because they could.
That sucks. It really does. It's terrible that that you went through that, and I'm sorry about your son because he doesn't apparently want to have a relationship with you because he's been through the foster care system and they brainwashed him against you, and it's Twisted Pistol says his wife works for CPS. Well, I'm sure, and it's nice that they do, but the problem is there's so many horror stories. They never seem to work to try to keep the parents to keep the families intact. They always seem like they take the kids first and ask questions later. And again, the people I've had, maybe I don't know success stories. I don't know, but I just think they're right in the middle of the municipal abuse, and certainly with this case, apparently this all happened because you spanked your child, and a lot of people still do that. That was once acceptable, and I just think it's wrong to take
It,
somebody's.
it was just so extreme.
Yeah,
and,
no, it is.
and you know, it's tantamount to putting me and my wife to death by saying, well, you gave your son a whipping on the butt with the belt. Now we got to kill the parents. What's the difference?
No, exactly.
Well,
I understand what you're saying, and
they,
and
they
certainly,
chose
but we go ahead. I'm sorry.
they just chose the most extreme and cruel way to punish us that they could think of. And I could see the Schadenfreude in their faces. They were actually enjoying it. They were taking a pleasure in watching me and my wife suffer. And our son, God only knows what he suffered. But they kept him from us for 10 full years. And they just filled his head with poison that whole time.
Well, Clyde, I really feel for you, man, but your connection is just too bad. Like you're going in and out, and you lost. We're gonna have to. I'm so sorry. I really appreciate you making the effort to be here, and I wish you the best of luck. Keep in contact with me, and I'm sorry, but I mean this. The connection just keeps going in and out, and your voice keeps going in and out. And you can't hear me right either, so
Yeah, I'm
I'm sorry
afraid
about that.
you're right. Um, I appreciate the invite. I wish I had better internet, but
I
poor
understand.
people have poor choices.
No, exactly. I write about that all the time. So I wish you the best of luck, brother. Thanks so much for making the effort to come on, and I hope things get better for you.
Yeah, they do get better. At least, I really enjoy reading the stuff you write. There's a lot of authors out there I really enjoy reading, but I don't always get to enjoy them. But
Well, I hope you continue to read me. And again, just, keep in touch and let me know how it's going. I'm so sorry, brother. Okay.
it's okay. I understand.
Take
Like I
care.
said, I can correspond through email, but I can't really get the video thing going too well.
I understand. I probably should have done a test call first. So thanks, Daniel. Thanks for joining us. We're going to move on. Take care, Clyde.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Good. Good. And White Wolf appears. Hello, White Wolf. How you doing?
Okay. Do you want to talk about Trump's latest military adventure?
Sure. What do you want to talk about? Because obviously this show is just, I'm talking to almost nobody anyhow. I'm just looking at
Well,
this. And again, I
I'm
hate
thinking
to
that
sound.
we're approaching the grand convergence here,
Okay.
because one thing that I'm thinking of, okay, if let's say Trump attacks Iran, uh, and let's say we have a false flag in this country and they blame it on Iranian sleeper cells, what would that look like?
Yeah.
And I think that such a scenario is possible because I think that's what all this ICE thing is about. It's about getting people acclimated to just citizens being snatched off the street for no reason whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So what if there's a false flag and they blame it on the Iranian sleeper cells, and then they say, "Oh well, we have to go door to door, house to house in Philadelphia to ferret out these sleeper cells we know are out there," and they're going to be hauling people off and so on and so forth, and some people are going to be applauding it, and other people are going to be like, "Oh, here we go." I I really think that Trump has turned ICE into his Gestapo at this point. I think you've got all these bad bully cops. Jason Barker and I were talking about that today. That
Mm-hmm.
they've got all these bully cops that are joining ICE, just so that they can create mayhem and take it out on people they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And this this could get ugly in a number of ways. And another possibility is that if the U.S. goes to war with Iran, that this could merge with Ukraine theater, and the Russians might perceive an existential threat and launch a surprise attack on Europe, which might include nuclear weapons. The Russians said several years ago that that's on the table if they feel threatened enough. So I think we're seeing a lot of
Yeah. No, it's
convergences here.
it's definitely and the idea that, again, that we're going to go to war with the country, there's absolutely there's no reason to go to war at any time unless you're attacked. But the idea that we have absolutely no bone to pick with Iran. This is all at the behest of Israel. They've nothing. And again, I have Iranians in my family. I talked about that. My sister married an Iranian. I've met many of them over the years. Everyone I've met has been really nicer than most Americans. And it's just absurd. The idea that
Well,
we
I
feel threatened.
agree. When I was way back in the '90s, when I was in college, and the '80s, I knew several Iranians. They're the nicest people you would ever want to meet. And I even talked to several Iraqis that back before the first Gulf War. And this idea that Iraq is like full of militants that want to blow up American infrastructure is just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It was ridiculous back then. It's even more ridiculous now.
Yeah. Oh, it actually absolutely is. And they keep saying they're a state sponsor of terrorism, whatever that means. I mean, define that, explain that. What do you mean state sponsor of terrorism? It's just easy to throw that out there, just like it's easy to say anything is Hamas. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I
Yes,
think,
well, you've always called it the Trumpenstein Project, and I totally
yes.
agree with you. And I don't think any of the American people, even those who voted for Trump, I don't think they voted for this. And
No, I don't think anybody voted for this. And
no,
maybe citizens, maybe someone in Israel did, but and it's I was watching Owen Schroyer that he came on my YouTube because he has his own show now. He's much better than Alex Jones at this point, but he was talking about how bad can the Trump administration get? They're just so awful. that it's, and they've basically declaimed the only decent. I know you don't like them, but I liked RFK Jr. and Tulsi, and he just basically slapped RFK Jr. in the face by this glyphosate thing he did yesterday. Issued an executive order, basically giving him immunity for all this awful stuff that RFK Jr. has been warning about forever, and is trying to change. So what is he supposed to think about that? He's supposed to be in the administration. And Trump just doesn't care. And if RFK Jr. says anything about it, Trump will fire him. 100% chance. So,
well, Jim Willey called it the Biden show. Okay, but back from 2020 to 2024, and basically what I think we have now is the Trump show, and and I mean I don't think JFK is for real. I don't even think Thomas Massey is for real. If any of those guys were for real, that they would call out Congress as just being a bunch of perverts and pederastic sodomites. That they would call everything out. They would demand immediate investigations, and we would go where the Franklin cover-up left off, essentially.
Well, what else can
I say?
We have the Epstein files there. We have the template. We have all these indications of the stuff they're doing. And
right.
But
well, I think the Epstein files is like Pizzagate 2.0. Pizzagate came out right towards the tail end of the Hillary Clinton campaign, and it totally destroyed her candidacy. And now I think what they're doing with the Epstein files is they're trying to destroy Trump. And because everything is homing in on Trump. And I think part of this is they want a civil war in this country. They want people pitted against each other. I think you would agree with that.
No, yeah, there's no question they do. But at this point, why are they giving us all this information? Because the people that bother to look at it understand, okay, we have leaders that not only are trafficking children for sex, but apparently are eating them, and openly inventing code words like "I'm walking the jerky." And Woody Allen, I saw a new one after I wrote my latest Substack that Woody Allen and Epstein are joking about, Woody eats the bones too for protein or something. And Woody said, well, I don't like to waste. I mean, this is, you could see Woody Allen doing that in one of his movies, except to pretend he was a cannibal. This is really the darkest stuff imaginable. I don't think very many people thought that they were that our leaders are cannibals. And then you have the restaurant named The Cannibal, and oh no, it's named after a bicyclist because that was what he was known as. So can you think of a more unappetizing name for a restaurant than The Cannibal? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Okay, it was some biker's name, so okay, that makes sense. Come on, it's ridiculous.
Right. Well, I ran into this years ago, when I was on a religious retreat in 2005. I got to listen to a 2-hour confession by a Satanist. Okay, he singled me out. We went down by the lake. I told him he could break silence and whatever, and he told me how they were sacrificing babies, and he tossed his ceremonial dagger in the lake, just a stream of horror that he was talking about. He was just associated with like one of the local covens in Philadelphia, and I'm sure that people would be amazed at how widespread this stuff is in all the major cities, and I think the school districts are absolutely infested with this stuff in most places. I think the police departments are just doing cover up. I think that CPS is part of the trafficking networks. It would be interesting. I mean, Clyde was telling his story, and his is just one of hundreds upon hundreds of stories.
Yes. Yep.
You've had them on your show over the years. And I just enjoy hearing those stories because people need to understand that this is not just in Washington. This is not just in the top echelons of the federal government. This is everywhere.
No, remember the Franklin scandal was Nebraska, in the middle of the heartland of America. And that's, as I said at the time when I wrote about it, Now they were Warren Buffett kind of had his fingers in there because he's from Nebraska, but you had the police chief there, the large newspaper publisher, local powerful people.
Right.
But
yeah, the whole city was corrupt according to the testimony of Alicia Owens.
Yes.
And they said she made it all up.
Yes, perjury.
Yeah,
it's a minor.
And what motive would she have to make that all up against these people?
Yes, exactly. And what I want to know if there's ever been a minor in the history of American jurisprudence that was charged with perjury. I don't think so. I think she's the only one.
Right. No, it's ridiculous. And then of course the Franklin scandal touched the Catholic Church as far as Boys Town is concerned.
Yes, Boys Town. Yep.
And but the thing is, okay, in 2018, of course, people are aware that the Cardinal McCarrick scandal broke out, and he went down in flames. And now you talk about the deep state all the time. Well, there's a deep church too. And as far as I'm concerned, all of these cardinals in the Vatican are nothing more than operatives, and they've just.
What do you think about what about the reference and I think one of the most curious references in the Epstein files is the offhand remark that was during the time when Jeffrey Epstein was living at the Vatican. What the hell is that? Jeffrey Epstein was living at the Vatican?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Jeffrey Epstein was living at the Vatican. He wouldn't be the first pervert that was inside the holy gates, but now I don't know what Jeffrey Epstein would be doing specifically at the Vatican. That would be very interesting. It would be interesting to know who he was meeting and what they were discussing.
Mm-hmm. It was Bishop Paul Marcinkus there then, the mobster banker they had for a while there, running the Vatican Bank.
The Vatican Bank was compromised from the beginning. When Pius the 11th set up the Vatican Bank with the Lateran Treaty in 1929, he had several Jewish bankers that were doing his investments for him, and they were investing in companies. They were doing a lot of investments with pharmaceutical companies because they knew where the money was going to be. And they were also doing a lot of investments with contraceptive companies. And of course, the Catholic Church is against contraception. So go figure.
Right. Oh, I'm going to I'm putting this link back in the, just any of you guys want to come in. Again, I started this thing. Everybody seemed to like the idea at first. So, and I'm glad White Wolf takes advantage of it, but hasn't been a popular feature lately. So I'd love to have, I would love to see more video calls. We had a few people early on, so I got to see what some of you look like, which was pretty cool. So I can know you better. I just see your names there. So the link's there if you want to jump in and just talk about anything, because this show obviously has gone off the tracks in terms of Clyde couldn't keep his connection up, so we really can't talk about that. So we got White Wolf here talking about various things, and you guys want to join in and
well, Twisted Pistols put up a comment.
Brother from Canada. There's RB Ham from RB Ham on the road as always. The hardest working trucker. What's going on?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Brother?
And Brian,
good. I hope. Yeah, good. I hope I come in clearer than usual. Sometimes people have a problem hearing me. Yeah, just on the road programming note, Don, I don't need you this week for my show Beyond the Veil.
I have Saturday night off. Okay, that's good to know. Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually doing my show Sunday night at 9 p.m. 8 p.m. Eastern. Boyd Anderson's going to be the guest, and it's just me and Boyd this Sunday. I'll be on the road till I'm not getting in off the road till tomorrow night. It's been a long week.
Cool.
So anyway, yeah. So I just wanted to mention, you guys maybe touch on the interview that Tucker Carlson had with Mike Huckabee.
Yeah, I haven't. Is it all? I looked for it on YouTube. I couldn't find the actual interview. I definitely want to watch it though. Yeah, that should be very interesting.
Yeah, I watched a little bit.
Yeah,
I watched a little bit of it. Oh yeah, they had they harassed his producers and made life difficult for him, and said that they had to do the interview in the airport because they couldn't guarantee his safety going to the American embassy in Tel Aviv.
Right.
And it's just unbelievable what's going on there. But he did have some pointed questions about Huckabee meeting with Jonathan Pollard, and then they went through the whole Christian Zionism and what is it and all that stuff. And I think Tucker kind of doesn't. It's not the best interview in the world. I would have asked Mike Huckabee, excuse me, Mike, but do you believe that a Jew born in Brooklyn has more right to this land than a Christian Palestinian born here in Israel? You know what I mean.
I do know that Huckabee said that we should be paying for everything, and Israel shouldn't have to be paying anything at all. They should be paying nothing at all. But hold on, RB, because I got Brian here.
Okay.
Good to see you, Brian. How you doing?
Doing all right. Yeah, I can hear you.
You're now you're freezing up. You're not Brian Taylor, are you, Brian Taylor?
Yeah.
You are Brian Taylor. Okay, you look different than you did the last time, I thought. Okay. How you doing?
Yeah, I got a haircut, so my hair's a lot shorter now, but yeah.
Okay, that's why. Well, good to see you. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I wanted to bring, well, in keeping with like the CPS theme, I remember reading an article a couple years ago from Health Impact News, and he was covering this state senator. I think it was in Alabama, but I think her name was like Nancy Schaefer, and she was going to come out with this documentary about CPS and all the abuse. And then like her and her husband were pretty old. They'd been married probably like 20 plus years. And then out of nowhere, he just like kills her and then himself. And like the family was like, had a hard time believing it.
Well, that's what they claim. I mean, that's what they claim. And I have that story in Hidden History. Let me talk about it. I don't think there's any question that they were. I think they were very religious people, and they were older. They had children and grandchildren. There's no way they would suddenly decided to kill. And she just happened to be the most vocal critic of CPS out there.
And then like the documentary got like memory hold and like never came out.
Oh yeah, exactly. No, and it's people remember her. You know, she gets mentioned a lot. I mention her a lot, and but yeah, that's why it's a shame we couldn't talk more to Clyde. But Clyde's connection wasn't great, and you know, he's like a lot of these people that have been shell shocked by their experience. You know, when you go through that stuff, and I mean, I think he was in jail for at least 57 days. Him and his wife both. You know, if you're not a criminal and you're going to jail because of something like that, because you spanked your kid, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just something that, you know, 100 years ago, anybody living, I'm not saying I don't believe in that really, but I mean, you ought to be able to do it. I mean, it's your child, but that's the problem I think we have now, is that they don't want parents to have those rights. And so everybody gets involved, and well, you know, I don't think you should be doing that. You know, they're going to determine, and that takes away parental rights, and that's where the state comes in. And so it makes the state determine what you can and can't do with your kids. And that's one of many things that are wrong with our society.
Exactly. I agree. CPS was inaugurated in order to attack parental rights, along with the whole public school system.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I think it's Twisted Pistol who says his wife works for CPS. And again, anybody, and especially any good people that are there, are wonderful. Obviously, you need a lot more good people out there. And you could say maybe there's a niche there for them to fill, but again, I just found, I give you an example of that. You know, I wrote about this in it was Bullyocracy. I wrote about it, but there was a kid in Cleveland years ago that he ended up killing. He was in kindergarten, and they ended up killing his kindergarten classmate, a little girl, with a gun, a kindergartner. And this kid had been expelled from kindergarten, I don't know how many times. He was living in like his uncle was a crack dealer, and he was living in a house that wasn't even really a house. Both his parents were in jail, I think. So clearly, if there was ever a reason for Child Protective Services to come in, it was that situation. And yet apparently they came and they didn't do anything. They didn't remove him from that home. No, instead, somebody that spanks their kid, they remove him from that home. Or Tamsin Bowles and the Reggie Bowles that have been on our show several times, they didn't want their kids to be vaccinated. So they removed them and they vaccinated one, and now he's severely autistic because of it. That's when they step in. But something like that, where there really is a danger to the kid and the parents are in jail, so you're not breaking up a family, they didn't intervene. The school didn't intervene, did nothing. And he ends up killing the kid, killing the little girl. I mean, imagine going to kindergarten and imagine being the parent of that girl and finding out your child was shot to death by by her fellow classmate. Unbelievable. And that kid's learned nothing. I looked up his Facebook page later, and he's just, a wannabe gangster and just, adopting. He learned absolutely nothing from the experience. He didn't have an epiphany or anything like that. So where was Child Protective Services there? That's relative. That's what I'd like to know.
Like there's probably like some good people trying to do good, but just it seems like it's corrupt as a system, and that's where the problems come in. And like health impact news he's been covering stuff like that for years, and like there's like horror stories. Like they'll take a kid away from a home because their parents spanked them, and then they'll put them in a home with like a pedophile or something like that, and it's just like horror stories like that, and you're just like, well, what was the point of that?
Absolutely, there's no question. But you don't look quite like you came from my generation now, Brian. Your hair short. Before, the first time I said, wow, that's like that was one of my compadres back in the day. All you needed was a guitar hanging on the wall behind you, and it would have been perfect. But RB, you're listening there on the road. What are you? Do you have anything like CPS up in Canada, RB?
Yeah, yes, exactly the same sort of thing. It's Child Protection Services, CPS, and they get called out all the time, especially in the lower class homes, natives homes, and all that stuff. And the same problem, a lot of revolving door foster homes. Kids can phone up and complain about their parents. And we have the added problem now, of course, with the trans agenda, that Bill C3 was passed in the Parliament, which means that if your kid is going through some kind of a gender dysphoria phase, and they decide they want to be transgender and get their sex changed or whatever, if you're a parent and you try to step in and say, no, I don't think this is right, you can be charged, and they can take that kid away from you because you're not affirming that child's desire to become trans. It's even worse up here. We just had a shooting up here in British Columbia, Tumbler Ridge, BC. Check it out. Where this man, this teenager boy, who had a lot of mental health issues, tons. The cops are always up at their place. And this last time he had a mental health episode, they went up there and they took away his guns and put him in a mental hospital. Well, he gets out of the mental hospital, decides he wants to be trans now, and gets his guns back. And then he has a psychic episode, and he went to a school and shot up the school, killed a bunch of kids, and then killed himself. And how the RCMP framed it is that he was a man, he was a woman, not a man, because as they said at the press conference, the RCMP chief says that we have to, even though he was the perpetrator, he's dead now, we still have to affirm his gender because he wanted to be known as a woman, so that's what we're going to call him. Unbelievable. And it's happening more and more. These kids that have gender dysphoria or whatever, just having mental health issues, think it's cool to become a woman now or just be a trans, whatever, because that's in the culture now. It's a way to be standing out, a way to be cool, a way to get attention to yourself. And so we got a ton of those issues up here. Our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, sent his son or daughter, I forget which, to the Tavistock Institute when he was living in London, and he or she switched genders there. And that was before they shut Tavistock down because of all the lawsuits coming out of there. So, I mean, it's from the top down here in Canada. Our Prime Minister has a trans kid, and all across this country, if you're a parent and your kid is getting counseled at school against your will and behind your back that they might be in the wrong body and that they should switch bodies to get puberty-blocking drugs and perhaps surgery to cut parts off, you can't step in and do anything about it, or else you can be charged with a hate crime up here now. We are in big trouble in this country.
It's the same way in England. England already passed that law where if a parent doesn't, if they don't support gender affirming care or some nonsense, some Orwellian term, which means again, if you object to your child wanting to mutilate themselves and become, overwhelmingly suicidal, which they do, the suicide rate is through the roof for people that have gender dysphoria or whatever the hell you want to call it. Then you can be, I think, prosecuted, not alone just taking the child away from you. So we haven't quite reached that point here, but that's where we're going. And don't doubt for a second, there's God knows how many millions of Americans that would support that. Yeah, we would be doing that here. Same way England is now, they're sending people around. I don't think they're doing that yet in Canada, but maybe they will. They're sending people around to houses, having the police question them about their Facebook posts. And people have been thrown in prison. We're not that way here, and millions of Americans have supported it. Well, that's good. They should write that stuff. I can hear them now. First Amendment.
In Florida, wasn't there a case of the cops came to a lady's house because she had written something against Randy Fine?
Yes,
the congressman there, and so it's happening everywhere right now. But in the United States, you're getting cracked down on for anti-Israel posts. So, I mean, it's pretty bad. You're definitely a Zionist occupied government there, I'll tell you what. And that you have to watch that conversation between Carlson and Huckabee. It's very, 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 very mind-opening to what's going on. It looks like Huckabee is being held against his will. He's got a gun against his back. He's not allowed to say anything bad about Israel at all. And it seems to me that you get more. You'll get in bigger trouble in the United States, even here in Canada, if you say something bad about Israel, than you will if you say something bad about your own country. You can run your own country down. You can burn your own flag. But if you try to burn an Israeli, I dare you to try to burn an Israeli flag in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington. You might get shot, and they'll celebrate it in the newspaper.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. Yeah, I don't, it's. And again, it's. I use that example of that kindergartner in Cleveland. There, you had example that, and I don't know how many other cases that are like that, but that was so obvious that when you have people that are going out where it's the guy spanked his kid, or they're not getting vaccinated, or some neighbor, is a case of Tamsin Bowles and Reggie Bowles, where I think it started with the neighbor calling and saying that they thought one of the kids was malnourished, or something like that, and it just spiraled out of control after that. But here in this case, this kid had already brought a knife to kindergarten. He had been expelled twice from kindergarten, and he literally didn't have a home to go to. His uncle had a crack house. Somehow CPS didn't remove him from that home and save that little girl's life? Unconscionable. And nobody was punished for that at all. The idiotic mayor or whatever of the town, I got all the quotes in Billy Leprosy, where we need to hug him all the tighter. They murdered him. And as I said, he learned nothing. Yes, he was only 6 or 7. But if you look at his Facebook posts when he was, I don't know what he was by the time I wrote the book, but at least an older teenager, if not 20-something, he learned nothing. All full of gangster stuff and violent symbols, wanting to be. So it's, maybe they should have punished him. Maybe they should have taken him out of the house first, and maybe they could have saved both their lives. But
it's a very big problem there.
What do you think about all this?
Okay, well, basically, I think that Tucker Carlson is a shill. And the interview he just had, what he's doing is he's giving us an alternative narrative. And he's not really going down far enough down the rabbit hole. The last Tucker Carlson interview I really listened to was the one he had with Vladimir Putin a few years back. Mm-hmm. And I learned during the course of that interview that neither Putin nor Carlson knew anything about Russian history. And Vladimir Putin is talking about this very obscure ruler in Kiev that lived 1,100 years ago, and his whole history of that ruler, I don't know where he was getting his sources from, but it was exactly the opposite of what really transpired. But meanwhile, when Vlad Putin got up into modern times, he talked nothing about the Treaty of List-Vlasic, okay, that was negotiated between the Bolsheviks and the Germans that made Ukraine an independent state. And I mean, he was missing that whole context. And so I just disregard what Carlson says in his interviews, because half the time people are just swallowing this without doing any research, thinking that they're getting the truth. But as far as
I'd like to say, I got to have you on with John Brisson to see see if any of these guys. Is there anybody in public life, because you don't like Massey either? Is there anybody in public life that you think is legitimate? Is there anybody out there that you think is honest? I just want to know.
Is there anybody out there? Yeah. There's a few people way down low on the totem pole that I think are honest. I think that Jason Barker is not a shill. I think that
I'm sure Jason's glad to hear that.
Yeah, I know that you're not a shill.
Well, I appreciate that. I know I'm an exclusive company.
But you really have to do the research, and unfortunately the internet has become like a social media dumpster fire, because it just herds you into a particular group that shares views similar to you. And it's like, well, I don't want to become an echo chamber. I want to connect with people that have different views and hear their side of the story, so that
but nobody that has a bigger platform. Like, obviously, I'm not going to ask you about anyone in Congress if you don't, because Massey's the best we have, I think. So obviously, you don't think anybody else is. Anybody with a bigger platform than us, like Candace Owens.
No, Candace Owens is a complete shill. Good grief.
Okay.
I mean, Candace Owens is allegedly Catholic. Well, she doesn't say anything Catholic. She doesn't say anything that represents the faith.
She's got a crucifix behind her all the time. That's interesting. I need to do that. I need to set up a crucifix here somewhere. That's what I need to do.
Well, just because you have a few props, it doesn't mean anything in my book.
She says she goes to Mass every week.
I've served Mass for perverts that could have charmed the stripes off a tiger. So.
What'd you say, RB?
She says she goes to Mass every week. But one thing I will have to agree with him on with Candace is there is such a thing as the Hegelian dialectic, right? You have one force fighting against another. So the powers that ought not be like to have this continuing strategy of tension that keeps everybody off balance, and so keeps people fighting against each other. And of course, that does that perfectly. But I'll have to tell you, without Candace, we might not have found out about Eric McCurk being a groomer of young teenagers and girls. We might not have found out about some of this stuff in the Charlie Kirk assassination. Charlie Kirk assassination is a complete psychological operation, a complete false flag psyop from top to bottom. And at least people like her are trying to call attention to it, and other people grab a hold of that, do some private investigating, and we find out more stuff. Like, for instance, last night there was a guy on the Jimmy Dore show who did some investigation and found out for police scanners, there was 3 separate police officers that were following that black SUV to the hospital, and they kept saying that they saw a passenger in the vehicle hanging out of the vehicle, a victim hanging out of the vehicle. I think that's when they finished Charlie Kirk off, was in the back of the SUV. He might not have been aware of the situation.
Is that Jason?
Yeah. Yeah, but no.
Jason. Okay.
So you have to watch the interview with Jimmy Dore did with this guy. It's not Jason Lee. It's somebody else doing some investigating. He used to be a trial lawyer, and he's doing investigating on his own. And so there is some serious things wrong with that. And without candidates, without the people on the other side that are actually fighting back against this Zionist agenda, we might be getting steamrolled by the Zionist agenda. At least there's some pushback. But like you always point out, Don, why is Candace allowed to say what she does? Why are some people like Tucker Carlson allowed to say what they were saying? It's like they want this war against the Zionists to conclude. In their perverse worldview, they want a huge war to kick off in the Middle East. And what better way to do it than to have the Zionists, through their own actions, Gaza, the genocide in Gaza, and the way they're on a 7th front war, and now they're in an 8th front war, taking over social media like TikTok and stuff, proselytizing and censoring and hammering the American people with all these pro-Zionist memes. It's like they want this to happen, and I think they want a big, huge war kicking off in the Middle East because, as Gerald Salotny says, when all else fails, they take us to war. Of course, it'll be short of a nuclear war, but it will be just like in 1984, George Orwell's 1984, perpetual war for perpetual profit, perpetual war for perpetual peace. To keep everybody at war all the time, the banksters and the military-industrial complex people in all the countries make big bank, and all the people are living in poverty, and the ones that don't get siphoned off into the army or whatever are going to end up being on universal basic income and just surveilled 24/7, told what to think by the propaganda news that they're digesting, and it's going to be like the boot stomping on your face forever. That's what's going on.
It goes back to this. Well, it goes back to at least to the Civil War when they had the exemption, the $300 exemption or whatever, which is a lot of money in those days. So nobody fighting in the Civil War, of the soldiers was anything but poor. Nobody was, if you had any money at all, you paid somebody to take your place.
Why do you call that conflict a civil war? That was the most uncivil conflict in the history of this country.
No such thing as a civil war.
War of northern aggression. I call it civil war just because that's what people remember it, so they know what I'm talking about. But it wasn't.
I suppose.
It was a war between the states. It was a war of northern aggression. Really, that's what I would call it, the war of northern aggression. But
that's my title too. The war of northern aggression.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate.
Abraham Lincoln was what people claim Adolf Hitler to be. Just an absolute.
He was pretty bad. He was definitely pretty bad. And I've said many times, if that's your secular saint, that's the guy who's the leading light of your civilization that most people think is our greatest leader. What does that say about your civilization? Brian, who do you trust any of these people besides me and Jason Barker, I guess? Anybody else?
I mean, like with Tucker Carlson, like I take everything he says with a grain of salt. Like he says some stuff that I agree with and then some not so stuff. He seems to have changed a lot of his positions, like 9/11 and stuff, and is more outspoken. I kind of like to take people issue by issue, really, and then kind of evaluate that. And then, because even if they're like let's say they're controlled opposition, but like sometimes they can talk about something and they could be right about something. Like Alex Jones talked for years about Agenda 21 and stuff like that, and so he was kind of right on that issue. It's just he kind of reversed himself, and
he was right about a lot of stuff. He just exactly. Now he's it's pretty sad. He was trying to again defend. Alex Jones was the first one I heard talk about glyphosate and glyphosate, all that stuff. He used to talk about that years ago. And here you have Trump signing an order protecting it, which goes directly against everything RFK Jr. has ever said and what I think he's trying to do. So how does that make him feel? And he must be like, what is Trump doing here? And Alex was defending him, but he is defending him. But he used glyphosate in weapons or something. He's coming up with some kind of way to, and again and they fooled Trump. Trump is always being fooled. It's amazing. He's the most naive guy in the world because he's so easy to fool. And it's unbelievable.
But where does the buck stop, Alan? As far as Alex Jones goes, Bill Cooper warned us early that he was a charlatan. He was taking everybody else's research and saying it with his own. And the whole Sandy Hook thing, he was involved in that. So nobody asked questions about the Sandy Hook thing which was a complete psychological operation, top to bottom, false flag all the way. And this way, because they prosecuted him, and all these fake Sandy Hook parents get a $1 billion judgment against them. Now everybody's afraid to say anything about Sandy Hook because Alex Jones went down for it supposedly, but he still has his show, and he's still shilling for Trump even now. So that's all. He's controlled opposition. It's all an inside job. It's all the way to keep people shutting up, and because they're self-censoring now because they're afraid, and that's what they want. They want you to be afraid of what you say. So that's what's going on. Anyway, I got to go out.
Okay, brother.
Coming up to
I'll
delivery here.
Keep in touch, man. Keep the road safe over there. RB Ham,
I will.
help him out, man.
And tune in to Beyond the Pale on Sunday night at 8 o'clock Eastern on Sunday night. Beyond the Pale on Rumble. I'm on my Rumble channel. We have a fascinating show with Boyd Anderson, who has a theory that's really, really it's intelligent, well thought out. He was involved in it because he was working in Dubai at the time when MH370 happened, and he got some inside scoop for the persons he was working with. One of them being a guy named Thomas Lilly of the Eli Lilly chemical family, who told him stuff about how they basically stole gold. They basically stole gold and transferred it using the MH370 scam. It's really amazing. So tune in Sunday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Beyond the Pale with RB Ham on Rumble. Love you guys. Talk to you later, and keep up the fight, eh?
Take care. Take care. See you later, man. Bye. Okay, so it's RB Ham live from Canada on the road. So, okay, we have lots of. I don't know. We seem to have a fairly good chat going on again. I just don't know why the numbers are so low. I'm sorry to be so demoralized. Vince Idelli was here. Yeah, where's some regular names are missing here. Good to see Peter Seacosh, briefly Robin Lee. Somebody was listening from Norway. Who was it? I'm sorry I missed that. I meant to shout you out. Yeah, here it is. Oh no, is that generic Stewart? It sometimes listen to Choni's channel because I've had your video deleted midstream on me. I'm not sure what that means. We do delete the shows afterwards a lot of times because YouTube takes down my channel far too many times. So I just want to take a chance on it. We put them all up over Rumble. That's Don, it. Oddman 5 watching from Norway. That's great to know somebody's watching from Norway. I'm sorry. Go ahead, White Wolf.
Do you think that since Vatican II that there has been a crisis in the Catholic Church?
Absolutely. I'd ask you as a Catholic, it's just because again, as a Catholic, it took me a long time to realize that the essential change in Vatican II was not just going from Latin, which is, the Latin was beautiful. It wasn't a direct translation to make it more accessible to dumbass Americans who don't want to know a few Latin phrases. It wasn't that. What happened there? I'm sure you know this. They took away and I still had the emphasis.
I was just asking that as a rhetorical question because a few days ago, I listened to an interview with another person that I'm convinced is a shill, Archbishop Athanasius Schneider, and he said he had a talk with Pope Leo, and he said that during the talk, he said, well, Pope Leo really doesn't understand that there's a crisis in the church. And I just asked you, okay, who's just a lay Catholic, if you can recognize that there's been a crisis in the Church of Vatican II, and you said what should be patently obvious to anybody who's Catholic, yes, there has.
Yes,
and
I am a huge family. I've mentioned it before, and we're a very Catholic family. My mother's side, anyhow. So not money on my father, although my father was a converted Catholic, and he was more devout than my mom was. But my mother's side is all Catholics, and it's a very big family. And I don't know. I think I'm probably the most faithful Catholic, and I haven't been to Mass because at least I still say I'm Catholic. And like, for instance, I observe Lent. Things like that, which I don't think any of those people do. That people have fallen away from the church. I don't know if it's just because of Vatican II, but I know I don't know if you got this when you were young, at WW. When I was growing up, and it took me a long time to realize the difference between Protestants and Catholics, especially born againers, the evangelicals. We never this sense. First of all, they didn't read from the Old Testament. The Old Testament was irrelevant and scary. We always had a reading from the gospel during Mass, and it was always the New Testament. And Jesus was stressed; he was front and center. Yes, the Virgin Mary was too, but I don't know what is stressed other than Israel in evangelical churches. Israel was not stressed at all. I didn't even get the sense it was not emphasized that Jesus was a Jew to a Catholic. It was not. And but what I think they objected to was the blood libel, so-called blood libel, that the Jews are responsible for the death of Christ. That's what changed with Vatican II. They took that out of that. You had people like Father Feeney, not to mention Coughlin, that talked about that a lot. I got a lot of it as a real little kid. I knew that that's what we were told. Not today's Jews, but that was what that was forever. And I think it's wrong to visit the sins of the great grandfathers or whatever, especially on the children. But that was, I think, am I wrong? Wasn't that the main change in Vatican II? Is that they stopped emphasizing that?
Well, that wasn't the main change of Vatican II, but that was certainly one of the changes of Vatican II. Yeah. So during the Good Friday liturgy, when we had the prayers of the faithful, we genuflected, at the request for the conversion of like infidels and the schismatic Orthodox and the Protestants, but we did not genuflect for the Jews because they mocked our Lord by genuflecting to him. And after Vatican II, we started to genuflect for the Jews as well during that part of the liturgy. And that was like one of the subtle changes. Now, of course, the church teaches that the efficient reason why our Lord died on the cross was because of our sins. As St. Paul makes clear, we are the ones who crucified our Lord Jesus Christ. The Jews were just the efficient instrument of that. Now, that's not to take anything away from the fact that the Jews murdered our Lord Jesus Christ through the instrumentality of the Romans. Of course, the Romans had a hand in it too through Pontius Pilate. But I don't know if I wanted to go off on that tangent, because what I was driving at was, how can the Pope not know that there's been a crisis in the church since Vatican II? I mean, yeah. And what you were talking about with Donald Trump, how can Donald Trump be making all of these mistakes? It's like, that's why I say it's all theater. Otherwise, you're just watching Dumb and Dumber.
Exactly. Well, the Catholics especially. I mean, I've seen it over and over again, and the Catholics, especially if you're a faithful Catholic, remember priests. Not in my lifetime. I don't know when they stopped, but at one point the priest took not only a vow of chastity, which I think is unrealistic, and I think leads to all the problems, but they took a vow of poverty. They stopped doing that a long time ago, and that's when you realize somebody going into that. Well, you're taking a vow of poverty, so you're not. But now you have priests that own nice cars and they can own real estate and stuff like that. That was unheard of then. And I think it contradicts.
Well, you see, part of this came into being with the Vatican Bank. Okay, before the Vatican Bank, priests and clerics were not even allowed to handle money. Okay. They had to depend totally upon the rich benefactors, and that was a system that had sustained the church for hundreds upon hundreds of years. But all of a sudden, you've got the Vatican Bank, you've got clerics and priests handling money, and we're used to that now. But if I could go back to my great grandparents, that would be a complete shock to them. The idea of priests having bank accounts and so on, because yes, the priests were impoverished, and that was a good thing. And along those same lines, I disagree with you, because the vow that priests take to be celibate, allows them to devote all of their time to their ministry and also to Holy Mother Church. A priest who's married has to devote a lot of time to his wife and his children. And
No, I understand what you're
I
saying. I
can't
just
see
don't
how
know
a
if it's
priest, okay, could go up during the mass and pray the lavabo, okay, Psalm 55, and then go home, okay, and have to give the marital debt to his wife. I think that would be a very conflicted man.
no. I think
But
philosophically, I agree. Go ahead, Brian.
doesn't Paul, when he's laying out the criteria of being a preacher, he said that the preacher should be a husband of one wife, and so uh, it's
Well, they didn't make so because you had popes that were married, and allegedly, and there's so much propaganda, anti-Christian propaganda. I don't know, but they claim popes. At least one pope was found dead in a whorehouse, centuries ago. But again, I look at the source and I know that they're trying to defend. I just think that it goes against human nature. But the ones that can do that, that's extraordinary. And I
Well,
think
some of the popes were real zingers. I mean, like Julius III, for example, was definitely a sodomite, and but Pius V didn't go nearly far enough in cleaning up the Vatican and letting us know where all the proverbial bodies are. But I've done the research, and that seems to go all the way back to the 13th century. Okay, I'm sure you know who Saint Francis was.
sure.
Well, St. Francis reforms were percolating through the church for 60 years after his death, and it came to a head when they elected a pope who was imbued with the spirit of St. Francis. That was Celestine V, and he wanted to reform the Curia and the College of Cardinals, and they would have none of it. And his successor, Boniface VIII, had him deposed. Okay, he quote unquote resigned. I mean, a pope resigning, now that's absolutely ridiculous. But and then he had all of his decrees not merely expunged but completely erased from the record. Pope Boniface VIII, as far as I'm concerned, was the inventor of the Orwellian memory hole. He just sent all those decrees down the memory holes so that people in the church would never know what happened as history progressed.
No, absolutely. No, you're right. I want to get to a couple questions here. I want to get to Den C says, "What do you think about Governor Jesse Ventura saying might run again?" I didn't know that he said that. I think Jesse. I mean, I was on Jesse's show when he had RT television, Russia Today. When I was television network, I was welcomed on. I was on Sean Stone's show a couple times too, but Jesse was very nice to me and liked my work then. He wrote a blurb for Bullyocracy later, but I have a feeling that he and I see things completely differently now. I know he's open borders, and I'm pretty sure he fell for the COVID psyop, and I think so. I'm not sure what he would be running on at this point, unless he runs completely on 9/11 and JFK assassination. But so I have an idea he wouldn't be the same guy that he was on his conspiracy show anyhow.
Well, I had Jesse Ventura pegged as a shill a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I don't know why but he certainly changed his rhetoric, but he's his that conspiracy show he had was pretty good, for as good as TV can get, and they canceled it, so it's not about the ratings because it was the highest rated show True TV ever had on the network. Odd Man 5 said, "That's from Norway. Good to see. It looks like you have a picture of, almost looks like a young Opie. Is that Opie? Is that you or something? It looks like Ronnie Howard from Andy Griffith. Have you or some of your readers read books by David Icke, and what is your opinion? I think he's great." Yeah, David Icke is known to be Billy Ray. I think still in the chat. Billy, when we first started America Unplugged, Billy Ray started. It was him and me. Tony hadn't come on board. It was just us two, and we were on the Iconic network, which is owned by David Icke and his sons, and I think his son Gareth, who I think I've been on Gareth's show a long time ago, but he produced it. So Yeah, I mean, David Icke's looking better and better. People used to make fun of him because of the reptilian stuff, but I don't know, man. If
Well,
you look at
that's
some
his
of these,
problem is that reptilian stuff. He sees green lizards behind everything, or aliens from the planet Poptoid, as Angry Tiger would
well,
say.
well, he doesn't stress it at all anymore. I think because people made fun of him. Just basically what he says about most everything is I think right on. I mean, it's but I'm aware that he was. I know he's raging out at Alex Jones all the time. He used to, that's how much Alex Jones has changed. Alex Jones used to have him on all the time. Used to have Jesse Ventura back when he was good. Jim Mars, who I loved before he passed away. But so yeah, I basically agree with Ike, but I don't know that they're reptilians. But I don't. When I look at those royal family members, sometimes you know, I don't know. I can. I'm not saying that it's likely, but
Oh,
I
I'm
wouldn't be
not
that
saying the
shocked.
royal family is a bunch of Franciscans or Boy Scouts.
No, no, there's no doubt about that. So, Brian, you were. What are you thinking about this? Were you raised a Catholic, Brian, or what's your religious background? If you don't
No,
mind.
I grew up in a Presbyterian church, but I don't really claim a denomination. I believe in Jesus, and that's what I believe. So
Yeah, David, Julia MR, it says David Icke's good friends with Richie Allen, who I think is very. Richie Allen had me on his show many years ago. It's probably been 10 years now. I'm close to it. And I thought we had a great show, and he's never had me back on. So I don't know. He's big over there in Great Britain. I think he's still pretty big.
Yeah, he is big in Great Britain, but I have him pegged as yet another shill. I mean that that before the pandemic, they just walked out with a whole galaxy of shills that people fell for, and then they
Mhm.
had these shills fighting with each other over is the British Prince a reptilian, or is this or is that, and they kind of got us all into our little corners, and then they had us fighting with each other, and that I always see as the narrative. That's always
Mhm.
how it plays out. That they want us warring with each other, and I mean we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah, I'm putting the link out there again for you guys. There's lots of people in the chat that I don't necessarily see all the time. So you want to jump in, you don't have to come on video. Would love to see you, like Brian, so we can see how good looking my audience is, or not. You can just it doesn't matter. You can come audio, but I'd love to have especially a show like this because kind of the guest connection didn't work out, whatever. And next week it's going to be completely different. So I'll promote that. It's going to be Kim Karath, who is an actress, a Hollywood actress, and she played the youngest child in The Sound of Music, which I've never seen actually. So
You've
to
never
tell her
seen
that,
The Sound of Music?
I have never seen.
That is
What
like a classic film. I
I
I
know.
thought that there were two movies that everybody saw: The Sound of Music and Star Wars.
Yes, I've seen Star Wars. I think Star Wars is a little overrated, but Arby Ham says Richie Allen's a real one. He figured out.
Oh,
That's
well,
good. Well,
give
I don't know.
yourself a treat and watch The Sound of Music at least once. You will love that movie. It's just
Yeah,
universal.
I've
It's
seen lots of clips of it. I know the songs. I know The Hills Are Alive. But
Oh, I learned to sing by The Sound of Music when I was 6 years old. I could sing that whole I could sing all those songs from memory.
oh, you won't want to miss next because Kim Karath she's lovely. She looks great still, and she was the youngest child. I forget what her name. I've never seen the movie,
Yes,
but
I remember her ditty in The Sound of Music. The sun has gone to bed and so must I. Goodbye, farewell, goodbye.
oh, was that okay? She's but I'm fascinated by her story because she has a son with challenges, an adult son, and she read my Substack about my sister and my niece both passing away within 4 days of each other, and my niece having Down syndrome. So she was very moved by it. So we're gonna have her on the show and talk. We have, she's kind of a nice combination for me. She can talk a little Hollywood. She has connections. So she didn't have a very long career there, and now she's become a caregiver. I think that's her only child. So I like to talk about what people go through, and the impact it has on them, because most people that don't have a child like that, don't love somebody, have somebody in their lives like that, don't realize that. Robin says I must watch The Sound of Music. I think I should. I probably should, because I kind of be embarrassed to tell her I haven't watched it. She might jump off the show and be, what? You've never seen The Sound of Music?
Oh,
Are you
sit down
crazy?
with your wife and watch The Sound of Music. My gosh.
No, I have to do. That's my
It's a
assignment this week.
wonderful movie. It'll put some sunshine in your life.
Okay, yeah, we definitely need sunshine, but that'll be a cool show, because she's a combination and of the couple world. Because again, she is, there's not that many people in her position um, have that kind of challenge, and she's embraced it, and you can tell that's most of her life. She has pictures with him. Hugger says I have 1 week to watch it. Absolutely, so I'll have to. It's a long movie, though, isn't it? I have to fit it in my busy schedule. Karen
It's
says
a
she's
long
seen
movie, but you'll feel like at the end of it that you've only been watching it for 10 minutes. It goes
Okay.
by fast.
Cool. And again, that link is in there for anybody else that wants to join. What else you guys want to talk about? Throw the subjects out there, or you can throw the questions out in chat. Brian, anything on your mind?
Uh, well, recently I just got done reading a book about the Whiskey Rebellion,
Oh,
in
yeah.
the 1790s, and it's just amazing to me to see how after they got the Constitution in, there was like a big split, and like a lot of the people that were like these ultra nationalists kind of adopted the same stances as the British government when,
Yes.
Yep.
in the Revolution, when they
But
were
well,
resisting
trust
those
me, they still
taxes.
haven't tamed those Pennsylvania hillbillies.
Yeah, well, hey, you're exactly right. And I wrote about the Whiskey Rebellion and Crimes and Cover-Ups some, and I wish Vince Agnelli was still in the chat, because he would tell you about Bacon's rebellion. He's the foremost authority on that. That happened well before that, and it was kind of a first foray into populism. But yeah, you had Shays Rebellion and Whiskey Rebellion both. I wrote about both of them in that book, and I have an ardor for the founders. I mean, maybe I look at them through rose-colored glasses. Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry, and I love these guys. But George Washington, that was not his finest moment, certainly, with the Whiskey Rebellion, because he crushed it. And again, the idea, it looked pretty hypocritical to fight a war for independence largely because of taxation, and then when you have your subjects complaining about taxes, when whiskey in this case, you crushed them with troops. So very, again, it's hard
And
to, there aren't any heroes have blemishes, for sure. Go ahead.
And one of the crazier things about it is that, the whiskey rebels, they were paying like all the other taxes, the property tax and whatnot. They just, because whiskey was integral to their economy, they resisted that. And then you had Washington, who, after the Whiskey Rebellion came out, the Western land started rising in value, and he had a bunch of properties, and they found out that he had a bunch of properties he hadn't declared, and he wasn't paying his property taxes on that, and so he was not paying certain taxes while getting the army to come and force a tax that he wanted to impose. So it was, and
Yeah, that was
and
it's
Jefferson
yeah,
actually described him as a monarchist after the Whiskey Rebellion, which I thought was interesting, because that they're two of the most prominent people, and it was like this big split in that period of time.
well,
Yeah,
you had
well, America, as far as I'm concerned, was a complete Freemasonic construct, and I still every year I chide Catholics for celebrating Thanksgiving, because it's like you're basically celebrating the demise of Christendom, and the demise of what the church built. Uh, but 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 the whole idea of America is not freedom of religion; it's freedom from religion, and I think we've seen that through the years. But also, a person has to have a religion. I don't care what your religion is, but everybody has a religion. So some people's religion is the Philadelphia Eagles football team, but
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
But you can no more have a man without a religion than you could have a day without weather.
Well, you're right. You're right. And and atheism or even agnosticism is definitely a religion. There's no question about it. And because is the idea that is the at least the agnostic is honest, more honest, and says I don't know, because we don't know, we can't prove it. We have our faith. We look around us and say I think creation proves a creator, and it's faith based. But for an atheist to say there definitely isn't, that's what I never understood. You talk to atheists, what you say, you're saying we're stupid to just have faith when we can't know for sure in a scientific way.
Well, the atheist is irrational, though, because if you're going to be an atheist, then you have to be anti-science. You have to be anti-reason.
We got exactly. We got a new guy here. Okay, good looking man. We had odd. Is it Odd Man 5? Right. Good to see you.
It's Twisted Pistol, Don.
Oh, Twisted Pistol. Why is it saying Odd Man 5 here?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, okay, I don't. Okay, yeah, Twisted Pistol. I'm sorry.
That's a comment, I think.
You look like I thought you would. That's good. It's good to see you, brother. Thanks for coming on. What's up?
Hey, thank you, and I'm a big fan, and thank you for always being patient with my crazy comments. But I was calling in because I'm not pro CPS, right? But I do understand the paranoia around it. I homeschool my kids and all that, but my wife doesn't work for them. She works with them. And I actually hear a lot of good stories about them though, Don. And and the horror stories are real. I have my own horror story with COVID and the vaccine and one of my children and a big old $30,000 court case I dealt with. I've talked to Billy about it before. But I guess what I was getting at was like there, because you posed the question, are there any good cases? And I actually hear a lot of good cases. I hear cases where teachers are reprimanded by CPS for being like mean and verbally abusive to kids. And I've heard stories of women pimping out their kids and CPS rescuing them, and parents putting cigarettes out on kids, putting them in hot tubs of water, and CPS, rescues these kids, and if anything, I've seen a lot of, I'm just going off of what I hear, right? But I've heard of these cases where CPS really almost in some ways try too hard to keep the families together, that sometimes they actually put the kids back with somebody they should be removed from, you know what I mean? So
not everybody in CPS is a monster, obviously, and probably even the majority of the people in CPS are trying to make this world a better place. There's no doubt about that. But the problem is the 20% that are part of the predator class, and so CPS as an organization as a whole is always going to end up being tainted. You can't have the government come in and try and delegate parental responsibility.
Yeah.
That's something that should stay within family circles, and the government should only be like an absolute last resort.
Yeah.
Now, of course, what you're saying goes in tandem with the whole breakdown of the family in American society. I mean, all of us, I'm sure, can tell horror stories about our own families, and the broken families and the broken children and the problems and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I think that we only, in our world especially, certainly anybody that contacts me about something like that is going to have a horror story. That's why they're not going to come. They're not going to contact me and tell me what a great job CPS did or whatever. So this is the problem, that we hear those stories, and especially if your wife works with them, Twisted. She sees the good, I guess, and a lot of us don't see, but it's just those stories are so bad, and they point to a system that what happens when people, especially when it's a person in our world like Tamsin Bowles, Reggie Bowles, when they didn't vaccinate their children. So the system's already prejudiced against that. So all it takes is one nosy neighbor to say, hey, one of your kids looks malnourished. And then it begins. And what happens is that municipal corruption starts. It's not just CPS. the local police is always in lockstep. The local media won't report anything. So those people end up like Clyde, who, anyway, I know we couldn't hear his story very well, but, he ended up in jail for 57. I think his wife died, if I remember this. And he lost his son forever to foster care. And his son wants nothing to do with it because he believed what they told him about, all because he spanked him. And it just seems to be in the case of Reggie and Tamsin Bowles, they got their kids back, but one of them was vaccinated against their wishes and now severely autistic. And if you watch my show, you could see him in the background. I mean, he flaps and everything like they do. He's that, and that he wasn't that way before. So that's what if that happens to you, then you're not going to care how many great things CPS does. It's like when they have a war and they say, well, we only had 20 casualties. Well, if someone you loved was one of the 20 casualties, that's obviously devastating. Yeah, so but I understand what you're saying.
I'm a paranoid parent when it comes to I believe that if you could keep homeschool your kids, it's very expensive to do it because you're leaving money on the table as a parent. If you first off, you need two parents to make that really happen. And so before I called you, Don, I was like, should I call? Because I would not want CPS to find me online and start an investigation. So I do have
you fear them too. You know what they can do if they decide to do that, because once the machinery starts, you can't stop it.
I guess I was just trying to put some positive story because I hear but I understand the resistance to them and I understand the paranoia. I have it. My kid, he's at the park right now. A few miles down the road. A good story would be one time when my kid was 2 years old. I went to Home Depot, and he threw a tantrum, and I grabbed him. And I'm a man, so I'm teaching him, with firmness. I've never hit my kid, but my tone is very firm. And I get my kid and he's kicking and screaming, and I put him in the back of my car, load up my groceries, and I'm driving. The whole time I don't realize I'm being tailed by police. And so I finally get to my home and I'm surrounded by a bunch of police, like a bunch of police cars. And they walk up to me and they say, "Is that your kid?" I go, "Yeah." And they go, "Oh, somebody called. They thought you kidnapped them." And I could have took offense to that. But then I thought, well, if somebody actually did kidnap a kid, it would be good that somebody called, so I could see where, I try to see the positive in it. But I understand, I understand people. It seems like that there's people in every walk of life that are just miserable. They hate themselves and they looking for reasons to make your life miserable, from a hospital to the police to teachers to CPS. But I agree with with the overall thought of be careful with them. You don't want your kids involved with the government in the sense.
And it's a fine line, because if somebody really is being abused, you want to try to help them. But the problem is that, like in your case, it can be misinterpreted. Somebody could easily look and they have the wrong situation. Oh, what is he doing there? And he's just trying to, and maybe the kids, there are lots of kids that are, that are that way, that like to throw tantrums. They like to, it's hard sometimes for parents to stop them, especially if they may show off in public and throw tantrums. So it puts it puts a parent in a bad situation. And then if some stranger sees them, and again, with all the Karens that are walking around, and I'm sorry, Karen Carpenter, I can't think of a better word than probably not you, but that's the name that's been bestowed upon them. But you have this kind of people, and they're everywhere now, and they're looking to see, it doesn't look right. I better call the authorities, and they love to call the authorities. We know anybody who listens to my show is very hesitant to the authorities. So what do they say in the conspiracy world? Never ever call the police, because they never make things better. But I appreciate you giving us another a view of that. I mean, I know not everything is it's not always black and white, but can only just by the some of the stories I've heard have not been good.
So it would be my question would be, if we don't have CPS, I mean, what do we have though? And I'm not a big pro-government type of person. I'm
Yeah,
from
it's a good
LA,
question.
and I ran to Texas for my quote unquote freedom as much as I could find, and so I'm not, because I just know that any institution could get corrupted, and you just have bad people everywhere, and you don't want to give them power over you. So
Yeah.
it's like, but if we don't have CPS, what do we have? At least there's something, right? I mean, for the kids that
Well,
are
you're
abused.
right, but let's. How old is CPS? I mean, I don't know how long CPS has been around. Maybe I don't know, maybe 50, 60 years, maybe. I guess I don't know, maybe longer, but I don't think too much longer than that. So what happened before that? Were there that many abused kids, and they just? I don't know. Or were parents better then? I doubt that.
Well,
In terms
there
of
were a lot
their.
of abused kids back in the day.
Okay, wait, well, go for it.
Well, there certainly were, but before the dawn of big government and socialism and so on and so forth, you basically had a balance of power between several institutions. You had the family, you had the state, and you had the church, and they were all essentially independent of each other, and they respected each other's jurisdictions, and they worked together in order to solve problems. And I'm not saying that like the 1950s was a panacea or a utopia or anything like that, but back then there were boundaries that people respected. And in the average school, for example, back in the 1950s, you didn't have kids stabbing each other with knives and getting into various fights and so on and so forth. And when the kids did get into fights, there were boundaries. I mean, as soon as enough damage was inflicted, uh, the aggressors backed off, and so on and so forth. And they knew the consequences if they exceeded those boundaries, and there were consequences back in the day. And
What if like okay, so I'm from Los Angeles and I moved to Texas, so we'll use guns as an example. When I was in Los Angeles, I couldn't stand the gun laws there, so I moved to Texas, and they have really relaxed gun laws, and I'm all about the Second Amendment, right? But the stuff I see here in the local news, I could see why in California people started pushing for gun laws. They had the gang violence, all the grape soda drinkers, Don, all the drive-bys. So you get people like, hey, we got to figure out a way to get guns out of these guys' hands. And so you have this reaction by government, and then they kind of overdo it. Because in Texas, I'm all about gun freedom. But there's sometimes where I'm like, man, some people should have an IQ test to get a gun, because some of these people shouldn't have guns, but that's their right. But I could see why people will start passing gun laws.
Well, yeah, exactly. But
so
what they're
do the
doing
same for children, like abused children. And then, okay, so how do we stop it? Okay, let's create this organization. And then it starts off kind of good, and then it just turns into this monster that kind of gobbles innocent people every once in a while, but also does some good, and
right. Well, my solution, but my solution overall is our Lord Jesus Christ, and tandem to that, we have to restore the family, and we have to restore parental authority, and parents, of course, have to be responsible. And
I want to go with James Yunion, James Yunion in the chat has mentioned a couple times, and that's true. There have been lots of allegations, and I think that was one of the allegations Nancy Schaefer was making before she met an untimely demise with her husband in Georgia, is that there is a connection between the CPS and child sex trafficking, where they've sometimes purposely seemed to direct these kids into families that abuse them and are connected to this thing. Because there's a lot of abuse in the foster care system. And, I think Nancy Schaefer, I believe that was her wheelhouse issue there. I'm not sure, but there have been lots of allegations about that. I don't know, but I would like to know what we did before a lot of things. What did we do before Social Security? Now people can barely make it, old people on Social Security. But before 1936 or whatever it was, there was no Social Security.
We had the kids in coal mines.
Yeah, well, you did, but the people people that lived to an elderly age, they live with family. You didn't have nursing homes either. So that's the kind of thing so the responsibilities get okay, we don't have to do that anymore. And so something like CPS, I think that, I don't know how much, I should have talked to my parents and people like that more about that, what they saw in their day. But first of all, I don't think people paid that much attention to what was going on with other kids. I mean, I don't think they necessarily looked and saw, I wonder if something's wrong there. I mean, I love the song, What's the Matter Here by 10,000 Maniacs, but the message behind it is that we all need to pay attention that, what if something happens to that kid? It's our problem. And that kind of gets into it takes a village thing where, we're all, raising the kids. And I just kind of don't like that line of thinking because it easily leads to collectivism and it takes away and you see with the transgenderists that R.B. Ham was talking about, where this is something where any sensible parent would freak out, I think, if their child told them, hey, I want to transition. I mean, what parent would say? You have some crazy women now, especially that, oh, yeah, right on. I've been waiting for that. But, any man certainly that would be like a nightmare. But in England, and I think in Canada, if I understood or be correct, you'll get in trouble with the school system. If they start talking about it in school and they made them feed them ideas, maybe the counselor or the teacher, and maybe a TikTok teacher talks to them and then their parents don't support it. In Great Britain, I think you can be prosecuted for it. So I think that's the line you have there, is that a parent can't object to something that really out there. That, I mean, again, 20 years ago, nobody would have thought, oh my God, there was just no parent in the world that would have said, yeah, okay, I'm okay with my kid transitioning. What? No parent would do that. They had enough time if their kid comes out of the closet and said they're gay. That would be bad enough to most parents, but I'm going to transition. But now parents are supposed to accept it. And if you don't in those countries, and that could be coming to America, and who would you have enforcing that? CPS? Things like that. Because that's who's going to come out to your house, and the local sheriff or whatever, the local police are going to come out and say, hey, you understand, school says you got a problem here that, little Billy wants to, become a girl, and you object to that. Why is that? And then what I think twisted too is that it's like if you've been, in the mental health system or something, you're tainted by the fact you've been in there, so that everybody that looks at you thinks, okay, well, I wonder what he has. So they look at everything you do as a nervous tick or that. Okay, they look at you differently when they know you have that background. Well, that's the same way here. If they're looking at you like if some neighbor reports, hey, I think they may be abusing the kids over there. How are you? Then you're going to be so nervous to appear normal and that you're not abusing the kids that it's going to nobody can stand to be under that kind of scrutiny. So that's the kind of thing I just object to that. And it's but I understand. It's good that I know it's good that there's some positive stories there. I'm glad to hear that.
Don, do you think it's the institution or the people in CPS? Like the reason why, look at me, man. I when I used to pick up my kids, all the teachers hated me. I dropped out of school when I was in 7th grade, so I never was, the teachers could just tell this guy doesn't want to listen to us. They treat the parents like children. When you go pick up your kid, they talk to you like they're going to protect your child more than you. So teachers would always be annoyed with me. I've had the police called on me, and even recently I have these neighbors, they're both cops. One of them always talks to my son, but then the spouse, a female cop, she reported on this little local Facebook page of our community that my son was doing something, but he wasn't even there, and she was like, yeah, his dad lets him do whatever he wants. So I get targeted, but I'm not blaming the sheriff's department. I'm just blaming that person. That's like, man, she's just a bad person. She's just with a badge and a gun. So is it possible with like CPS, like it's not necessarily institution, it's just the institution is going to attract some bad people, and they're going to have too much power. The power to take away somebody's kid, that is like almost like that's too much power. But
yeah, that's what it is. And it's the same thing with police. I mean, I haven't had that many bad experiences with cops, but I'm a law-abiding guy, but I have had some, and where they're unreasonable. And I see these stories, the cops gone wild and everything. And yeah, I've known some nice cops, that I coach their kids and things like that. But I also wasn't being stopped on the road by them. So I don't know. Maybe they would be nice then. I don't know. But I think again, the system there, at least with police, the policing for profit system, I think creates those people. They have a quota system, and they also know if they complain about something that they'll be ostracized. They're not going to reform anything. It's probably the same way in CPS or any of those other things where there's got to be people that don't like these things and hear about, I don't support them taking those kids away. But what are they going to say? If they say something, is that, well, thanks for pointing that out. We were wrong. You know how it works. And whistleblowers don't work in any industry. They're not welcome. I don't know. Brian, I'm giving you a chance to talk for a while. What do you think of this?
Well, it's like with anything, it's these institutions have power, and then these people get in, and it seems like only the bad people are able to get to the tops of it and run it, and then they enforce a bunch of bad stuff. And it's like with any institution, there's bad and good people, but you kind of have to weigh well, is the good that is done, does it outweigh the bad? And I've heard some horror stories about some of the things CPS has done or police have done, or even these kind of rehab centers or stuff that kids go into, and that's a more of a private system, and I've heard some horror stories with abuse. And so it's kind of what's worse, do we want to risk putting a kid somewhere in a system that they could get abused in, or it's kind of how do we get the good people to be in it and not the bad people and enforce good things? And it's a real complex issue that I know I don't have the answer for. I hate, whether it's a parent abusing kids or CPS abusing kids, it's bad. And
So it's bad people, right, Brian? I mean, on both sides, right? There's bad parents, but I'm completely paranoid of the government and all that. So I'm just keep saying that. I just wanted to see, I think with Don, I try to be a contrarian with him. So it's like
I see your things, and I understand what you do, and that's fine. Like I said, I don't, like on Substack, if you read my Substack, I get hundreds of comments usually on my articles, and almost nobody disagrees with me. So, I mean, I don't want an echo chamber, so that's fine. People can push back, and I don't have a problem. I'm a free speech purist, so people can think I'm not going to talk to somebody too long that says Oswald did it. I'm not going to give say, okay, go ahead and say what you want, but I just, been there and done that for too long. So I'm not interested in having that debate again. But, yeah, of course, but you make sense. It's not all bad, but I just think we need to if we look at some of these things like that, how do we get along without? I mean, something like the FBI. How do we get along with the FBI without the FBI until the 1920s? How? And has it served a good purpose? I would argue it's been way worse than it's been beneficial, I would say. And CIA, how do we get along with that till 1947? Certainly, I think, I think it's been far worse than it's been beneficial. Homeland Security. How do we get along with that until 2001 or 2002? How do we make it? Now it's ingrained. Nobody talks about, hey, this is a huge monstrosity. It's costing us how much per year, and people, God knows what they can do and looking into it. Nobody talks about getting rid of it. That's why I was so disappointed with Doge. I thought Doge had, that was a great idea, and I know White Wolf thought it was terrible from the beginning. And so did most people, but I thought the idea was great. And if you looked into all those kind of things, and if Doge had kept up, I mean, even something like Charlie Kirk, the rumor is in Turning Point USA, he wanted a Doge type audit of his own organization. He was concerned about it. So something like CPS, if you put Doge, if you turned it on, that's where you can uncover this kind of corruption, assuming you have somebody honest doing the audit. Now, that's the problem, is that will there be honest auditors? I don't know. I don't know if Elon Musk and them would have been honest auditors, but I like the idea anyhow. But that's kind of off there, but I think it has something to do with it.
Don, you see, so you're the a boomer generation. You guys get a bad rap from everybody. I'm the millennials or X or the beginning, but the GI generation, which is your parents' generation, I would assume. Uh, I talk to a lot of boomers who tell me like crazy stories of just getting beat by their dad or like, well, what we consider beat today wasn't beat back then. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like I've here,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm out here in Texas. I heard people, yeah, we used to, the neighbors would spank you, and so what if like
Yes.
that was all self-regulating and that's the way culture was, and then in some cases there was very severe, so they create these organizations, and you know, eventually, just like any other big organization, whether it's private or government, they kind of turn into a cancer of sorts. And the thing is, with private business, you could bankrupt it, but the government, it's whether headed towards some type of bankruptcy, but it's kind of hard to bankrupt it and end it. You know, if there's a bad company, they go out of business. But you have a bad government, they just play a psyop on you or tell you to vote, and at the end of the day, nothing really changes. But what if some of these like CPS was started, you know, because you know the intention was like, you know, some of these GI parents are you know, getting drunk and just abusing their boomer children. You know, I don't know.
Well,
My
I
mom
didn't
didn't grow up
experience
in an
that, but
abusive home, so you know, I
I
just
didn't
heard the story.
experience that, but I know a lot of people that did. And you're right. That was what they believed. And that's what I say, for somebody like Clyde to be, you know, spanking his kid, that was, you know, that was American as apple pie. I mean, everybody did that. And like you said, the neighbors did it. Back then, the teachers could do it. And so was that right? No, I mean, I don't necessarily like that. But again, is the government agencies that have been installed to take the place of that, because that's what they're doing to prevent parents from doing that stuff. Wait, Wolf, what are your thoughts? We're almost out of time here.
Okay, well, the
Catholic
government
Church.
has a way of weeding out the people that have integrity and want to do a good job. I know that happened to me in the school system. Okay, when I was in the school system, I was blacklisted because I didn't think the world was overpopulated. I remember telling the students that what you could do is you could take every American family and give them a suburban house and put it in the median strips of the interstate highways, and all the rest of the land would be empty. That's how overpopulated this country is. And I got blacklisted for that. And that's, you see, the problem is that there's a lot of people that want to do good, and they get into these agencies, and then they're told by other people, well, you've got to play the game. You've got to play the game. And so what happens is that they realize that there's boundaries that they can't cross. And so they try and do the good that they can within the boundaries. But meanwhile, what they're doing is what Twisted said. Well, there's a lot of good people in CPS. Well, there are. That's what gives CPS its reputation with the sheeple. But the organization as a whole is a child trafficking operation. That's what it is. And all the good people working within it, well, that's just part of the facade. And
Well, no, they definitely do, but we're going to have to once we get give us a closing thought of like 30 seconds, then I will let Twisted and Brian talk.
A closing thought?
Yeah, or anything you want to promote, or anything, I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, the only thing that I want to promote is Our Lady of Fatima. And Our Lady of Fatima said during the July apparition in 1917 that various nations would be annihilated if people did not repent and improve their lives. That was over 100 years ago.
And I think we can be
and here we have Mr. Trump. Okay, he wants to start a war in Iran, and I'm sure that most of the people in the chat can think of at least 9 ways that this could really get out of hand and go bad. And
let's hope let's hope nothing happens, which has been the
Yeah,
case so
and
far.
so
They
in
just
that
like to have the fun
context,
for it.
that's just where I want to lead people. But
Okay,
pray
well,
that
we definitely.
nothing goes wrong.
Well, I appreciate your astute wisdom, WW Twisted. What? Any final words and anything you want to promote?
Thank you for having me on, Don, and being patient with me. And my message would be that the world is good because people like Don Jeffries, Brian, and White Wolf, there's more of us than all these people we talk about. There's all this evil. And I think the real revolution is within, man. You got to make yourself a better person because we can't control a lot of things.
That's
And
right.
thank God for
Be
people
the
like you
change.
guys. I would have gave up
Well,
a long time
be the
ago.
change you want to be. I appreciate that. That's right. You got to set the example. Brian, any closing thoughts or anything you want to promote?
Just thanks for opening up the chat and letting us talk. And like with all these abuses in these agencies, I think like if we could somehow decentralize it, maybe it'd be better. Or it's such a complex issue, like because there's you know I've heard of CPS doing some good things, and then I've heard a bunch of bad horror stories. So it's kind of a complex
They're
issue.
definitely right. That's so we just like you said, that's the twisted words of wisdom. You got be the change you want to be. Try to set the example yourself. That's the first thing. That's the first step is try to walk the walk. And too many people don't walk the walk. That's the problem. We all talk the talk, but we need to walk the walk. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks to everybody in the chat room. And next week we'll talk the sound of music. It'll be something completely different. So anyhow, thanks guys. Thanks WW Twisted Brian. Thanks. Take care,
Later,
guys.
Brian.
See you next week. Same time.
Later, White Wolf. Bye, Don.
Take care.